So the only thing that everybody in this world has the same amount of is time. Everybody's got 24 hours a day. The people that manage their time the best around their parameters are going to be your high achievers.
Welcome back to another episode of the Todd, Durkin Impact Show. And this is not just another episode. No, this is episode number 100. Yes, episode number 100 of the Impact Show. So when I was going through all the folks who I may want on for episode number 100, all of a sudden I'm standing on a football field next to someone who has impacted me more than any person on the planet when it comes to my training methodologies. His name is Tom House. Coach Tom House is in the house today. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Let's get a little bit more excited than you are.
Oh, my goodness. Guys, you have no idea right now how I'm excited to have Coach in the house because I'm at Fitness Quest 10, and the last several weeks, we have been on the football field preparing our NFL guys to take off for training camp, except I've known Tom since 1999. I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory. This guy has so much wisdom and experience and knowledge. You're about to be, literally, you're going to fall in love. They're going to fall in love, Tom.
I hope.
Yeah, they will. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to speak. I'm just going to, in a moment, I'm just going to let you talk,
Okay.
Because I know the way you roll. You're going to be flabbergasted about the wisdom that you hear. But before we do that, just so you can really understand, you're like, wait, Tom House, I know that name. How do I know that name? How do I know that name? Well, if you're in the athletic world and you specifically love either baseball or football, his name comes up in many different circles. First, he was in Major League Baseball for over 20 years. He played from 1967 to 1979 for the Braves, the Red Sox, and the Mariners. And then from 1980 to 1995, he coached in Major League Baseball. Now, if you Google Tom House, there's some interesting facts about Coach here. But as a player and as a coach, he's an amazing person. But in 1999, I was working with a man named Mark Pryor. Mark Pryor was the phenom out of Cathedral Catholic High School. Oh, it used to be Uni, and I knew his family going back to his sister Millie because I was an athletic trainer at the University of San Diego. Now we're going back. And Millie and Mark's father, Jerry Pryor, said, Todd, you want to open this gym. You need to know Tom House. I'm like, who's Tom House? He's like, he's a pitching coach. Mark's been working with him forever, and you got to meet him. So sooner than later, all of a sudden, next I know, I find myself at a NPA, National Pitching Association, functional fitness workshop. And within 10 minutes, my jaw dropped. Now, mind you, it was just 4 years after a serious back injury from playing football. I had about 11 mentors at the time. I had been through Rolfing, structural integration, Feldenkrais, and now I'm sitting in this workshop, functional fitness workshop, listening to this professor speak about the body and about movement like I've never heard before. And folks, in now almost a 25-year career myself, there is not one man who has single-handedly impacted my philosophy, my methodologies, and how I train, not just athletes and elite athletes, but the everyday person, the person who wants to get better physically, mentally, emotionally. Tom House is a mentor like no other. So, Tom, welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Todd. That's a tough act to follow, I'm telling you right now. But what you did point out, we hit the crease perfectly. When you and I first ran into each other, it was basically the end of old school and the beginning of new school.
That's right.
When we first started, weight training wasn't even allowed for pitchers, let alone strength training. Nobody really understood the whys of movement or how to prepare movement with functional strength to survive long term. So what has happened since that's 20 plus years?
Yeah, so 21 years.
We're actually fleshing out with real data, with real research, what we kind of figured out intuitively. Things like when you move, you're only as efficient as your worst movement. If you're a rotational athlete, there's a certain set of rules. If you're a linear athlete, there's a certain set of rules. We also figured out with conditioning, you can only accelerate what you can decelerate. That 3 muscle groups on the front side, upper body, 2 muscle groups on the back side. In other words, just plain old weight training is neat,
Yep.
but it's not functional for the sport that you're actually doing. And you brought up an interesting point. You don't have to be an elite athlete to be functionally strong.
That's right.
This is just as important for a corporate executive to be good at what he does. His physical preparation is just as important to his mental acuity when he's making decisions as a businessman. So it fits across the board. To borrow your words, the only difference between the elite and the everyday are the lights and the paychecks. And I'll add one more thing to that. Businessmen don't get booed by 50,000 people like I did for most of my career. But the bottom line is the same basic rules apply to everybody, specific to their need state. One set of rules, personally adaptive, millions of times.
Now, I'm assuming you were a standout pitcher for 12 years in Major League Baseball. Were you a phenom?
No. I was a phenom in high school, a little bit less of a phenom in college. And as a pro player, I think Don Zimmer had it the best when he was going around and telling everybody what they meant to the Red Sox. He said, Carlton Fisk, you're this, and Louis Tiant, you're that. And when he got to me, he said, Tom House, you're consistently horseshit, but predictably horseshit. And I've pardon the bad words. And I was sitting next to Pudge, and I said, Pudge, is that a compliment? He said, shut up. Just let it go.
That was Don Zimmer.
Don Zimmer.
Don Zimmer. Guys, you remember Don Zimmer? Did you say Louis Tiant?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm old.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
And did you play with or did you coach Nolan Ryan?
I played against him as early as high school.
Okay.
We knew each other in high school, but I ended up being his pitching coach for the last 7 years of his career. He came to us at the Texas Rangers when he was 39 years old, and he pitched till he was 46. I had him during that time frame with the Texas Rangers.
And so you know now, Coach is now a young 73 years old and works with several notable quarterbacks and athletes with his 3D QB. Drew Brees, obviously you know. Tom Brady is he's been coaching Tom for many, many years. And then through 3D QB, some of my colleagues, Adam and John Beck and Taylor, these are guys who have all of the younger quarterback generation as well.
Right. I've kind of mentored them,
Yep.
and they're standing on my shoulders and making the whole offering even better. So it continues to grow. Nothing comes out of our mouth, either whether it's 3D QB or the National Pitching Association, that isn't statistically validated with confidence intervals and standard deviations. So it's science-based. It's good stuff. And it's delivered because we care,
Yep.
not because we're trying to get.
So you're hearing from one of my mentors, and when you hear me talk about even back to core and cuff, you got to train in 3 hand positions: fastball, breaking ball, changeup, straight foot, duck foot, pigeon toes. 60% of your power comes from your trunk. Guess where that's coming from? You're hearing the man next to me, in front of me, who's about 6 feet apart right now, is where I was so impacted in the late 90s, and I hung on to every word he said. In the early 2000s, I actually used to present with him at his workshops, the NPA, National Pitching Association Functional Fitness Workshops, and just to kind of to learn from a man like this, and not just the throwing mechanics and everything else, but just about the life wisdom, because he's had multiple businesses. He's been around the best in the game and the best in the world, and he has so much wisdom. Coach, when you hear this, what would be your reaction? Here's some of the things I'll say. The father of functional fitness.
Well, remember that the learning curve is about how many times you failed. So when people say I'm the father of anything, it means that I probably screwed up more than anybody on the planet. I would actually say that I think the thing that I figured out the most is what not to do. And anytime I think I've got the answer, something new comes up. So this ongoing learning, this commitment to getting better every day is, I think, what carries not just myself, but people like yourself and the people that are in our network. It's a loose network, but we're all committed to the same thing, getting the best you can possibly be out there to enable your clients to be the best they can be. That's the win-win right there.
I still remember that day when you're talking about fascia and you had challenged with the old Appley scratch test. With you're looking at the scapula and talking about putting a pencil and a chopstick between the shoulder blades. I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was in La Jolla, and when you were talking fascia, my ears lit up, because coming from the world where I came from, understanding that, I knew there was a wisdom there that I hadn't heard before, because he was taking traditional strength and conditioning into, I'll call it, more Eastern methodologies or practices, along with the mental, emotional aspect as well.
That's astute. Basically the East, all right, the Asian culture were the first biomechanists, and you mix in what they were doing between the ears with their focus and concentration. So you're right, we did borrow a lot from them, but like instead of calling it yoga, I called it yogatude. And instead of calling it weight training, I called it functional strength training. So we're trying to take all the things from every culture we possibly can to make our science-based stuff that much more applicable to everyday living.
Now, as you're listening and you're like, gosh, he is so interesting, so fascinating, but I know that name, Tom House, from somewhere else. For all you movie buffs out there, there's a movie called $1 Million Arm, and that movie is about Tom House. What was that like to have a movie based on your story?
It was a lot of fun. It ended up being, it was going to be a reality show.
Okay.
But then the producers and the money behind the $1 Million Arm figured out that there might be a movie here. So they actually scripted it. Disney picked it up. And in effect, the two kids that won the contest over in India.
It was two Indian pitchers. You were going to train them to become MLB guys?
Exactly. It was going to be a reality thing.
Correct.
They actually tested like 30,000 kids, and the kids that could throw, that could show that they could get close to 95. Nobody broke 95. But the three that qualified, two of them were old enough to come over. So they took those, Rinku and Dinesh, they came over and they joined me on campus up at USC, and just went from first day when they didn't even know how to play catch. When we gave them a glove, they put it on their throwing hand because they thought it was to keep the throwing hand warm. No, I'm serious. When we took them to the drinking fountain, they didn't know how to make the drinking fountain work. So they just looked at it. So I showed them how to press the button. And when they pressed the button, they used their hand to catch. I said, no, press the button and drink. And Rinku, who had a great sense of humor, he said, American smarts. So even then, it was cool. And then all the actors and all the support cast turned out to be baseball people. And Bill Paxton, who played me, and we were laughing a little bit about this off camera, ended up being a better Tom House than I am in person. Just ask my wife. That's the truth.
So your wife said that Bill Paxton was a
better Tom House than
you.
Tom House. So do you mind a little sidebar real quick?
Please, yeah.
I have like 2 minutes at the end. I got to tell the kids they were drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates. And for that 2 minutes, I was given $50,000, which I gave right back to the kids because I didn't know if they were going to make any money. I knew they got money to sign. Well, it turned out that the movie was a huge hit, and both the kids are millionaires right now. So 2 years ago, when I called Rinku, when he made the transition from baseball to being a wrestler, which was what he's doing now, I said, "Hey Rinku, remember that $25,000 I lent you?" And he said, "Coach Tom, that money is long gone. Thank you very much." and he hung up on me. So it goes to show you things change. But that was one of the better coaching experiences of my life. It was really fun.
And what was the highest that they got to?
They both threw the day they got signed. Rinku threw 96. And Dinesh, the right-hander, threw 95. So they both signed. They stayed in pro ball. Rinku lasted the longest. He got as high as AAA,
wow,
which is huge.
Huge
for a kid that had never thrown a baseball before he was 18 years old. Dinesh right now he's in Mumbai, and he's the most influential pitching coach in India. You know why? Because he's the only pitching coach in India. So it goes on. All the stuff that you and I have been training conditioning-wise is being taught over in India right now. Same stuff.
Wow. How long did you train them for?
I had them for 9 months. There was a time constraint.
What?
Because the whole deal was, can they come over and be mentored inside of a year and sign a pro contract?
Interesting.
So it took, if you watch the movie, it took 9 months to get them signed and off to play. We tried a little too early to get them signed. We took them over to Arizona, and the mounds were different, and basically they gagged, both of them. And flying home from Arizona might have been one of the low points for me personally, looking at two kids that felt like they let the whole country down, and especially their moms. By the way, I've never seen an athlete on TV turn around and say, "Hi, Dad." They always say, "Hi, Mom." The Indian kids were the same way. The moms, they would basically, because of the computer technology and being able to access each other, mom and sons every night would, "How you doing? How you doing?" And when I talk to the moms, first question, is he eating properly? Is he saying his prayers? Is he working hard? But the bottom line is we had an experiment called the $1 Million Arm. Both kids benefited, but I think there's a message out there. And when you say watch the movie, it's a warm, fuzzy movie with a purpose to it. So a good call on that one.
That's a great story right there. Another one. Is it true that you caught Hank Aaron's 715th home run? Is that true? I did my digging.
It's true.
In the bull, so you're warming up in the bullpen.
Not warming up. We had it preset. The guys that were relievers with the Atlanta Braves, Fulton County Stadium at that time had a really high wall,
Okay.
and then a fence, and the bullpen was in between the fence and the really high wall. And we had drawn straws for positioning because, Henry pulled most of his home runs, and everybody wanted to be right down the line. So we drew straws, and I actually had the choice of being closer to the foul line or to left center field. And I chose left center field because he was facing a left-handed pitcher, Al Downing, who threw a lot like I did. And I noticed over 7 years of throwing batting practice to Henry, on balls away, especially off-speed pitches away, he hit most of his home runs to left center. So people say it was pure luck. It wasn't pure luck. It was the fact that I was on Diamond 86 throwing extra BP to Henry Aaron that I kind of knew where the ball would go if Downing made a mistake. And Todd, this is the honest-to-God truth. If I would have stood still, it would have hit me off the forehead. So everybody talks about it was not a great catch. I caught it. The only thing I can honestly tell you, between catching and getting to home plate, I don't even remember. They said it's the fastest they've ever seen my little fat ass go. I ran as fast as I could. I was in there, and the next conscious memory I had, I'm putting the ball in front of me. He's hugging his mother. Both of them were crying. I said, "Here it is, Hank." He said, "Thanks, kid." And to this day, that is my best memory about pro ball, watching cool Henry Aaron, stud of all time, hugging his mom just like a 12-year-old little leaguer would. It's awesome stuff.
So wait, you caught the ball and then ran it in?
Ran it in because it went over the fence in the bullpen. So it's a home run. That's how he broke the record, went 715. And I ran it in, and at home plate around the crowd, I busted through the crowd and presented it right to him. And if you go to the Hall of Fame or Google it, there's a picture of me with the ball right in front of his face, hugging his mom. That was my lifesaver moment. To this day, like we're talking about it right now, I get chills. That's the highlight of my professional career.
I knew you caught the ball. I didn't know you ran it in and presented it to him.
You think I'm going to give it to somebody else to give it to?
I thought it would still be hanging in your cookie case.
The ball, I was actually offered $25,000 from Sammy Davis Jr. just to borrow the ball to get Henry to come to Las Vegas and do a show with him.
Wow.
So, and this is what I believe about fans. I gave the ball away. I gave it right back to Henry, which in effect could have been a $25,000 ball, which was more money than I was making as second year in the big leagues. So you know what happened through the course of that whole summer? I'd get letters with $5 in it. I ended up making about $2,500 from the fans saying it was really cool that you gave the ball away. Here's something, go buy yourself some bubble gum. So that's what's great about fans.
Wow. Later on, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you're known as the world's foremost expert in pitching and throwing and overhead athletes. But more importantly than throwing, Parkinson's disease. How has it affected you in the last 7 years, and what are you doing now to make sure you look awesome? You're out in the field, you're coaching. I had one of those moments the other day when Drew was throwing. You and I were standing there. It was like one of those just special moments in time.
Well, your kids were there too.
And my kids were there too, and Luke and Brady were running around, and it's like I wanted to freeze time.
Yeah.
Right. And how are you doing with all of that?
Well, it was a kick in the butt, to be diagnosed. I knew there was something wrong about 10 years ago because I was slowing down. Normally, I could throw batting practice and never miss. And all of a sudden, I'm hitting guys in the legs and I'm trying to work out, and fatigue is there. Getting out of bed in the morning to brush my teeth, it was like a chore. So they misdiagnosed for about 3 years, and finally Greg Rose with TPI said, "Tom, you got Parkinson's. Go to somebody that and find out for sure." So so I had it, and again, that was a pretty depressing day. But then I asked, "Okay, what do Parkinson's people do?" Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't have any protocols other than maybe riding a bike if your balance would allow it, or a stationary bike, but that was it. And what I kind of noticed as I was battling what I didn't know I was battling, the only time I felt any good was right after a really heavy workout. And that's when the enkephalines and the endorphins, the runner's high stuff, which are the cousins of dopamine, which when you have Parkinson's, dopamine is your brain stops producing it. So your nerves can't talk to your muscles. And in effect, what you did normally, picking your nose, something as simple as that, becomes a chore. Just to go through the motions, whether you are successful or not. So you're laughing. But the bottom line was, okay, what can we do to mitigate if they don't have a cure for it right now, but what can we do to slow down or deal with it? And what we did was we developed a Parkinson's protocol where, depending on how bad you have it and what you can and can't do, if you can go aerobic and anaerobic somehow, some way every day, recruit the enkephalines and the endorphins to kind of shore up what dopamine you have left, you can push the symptoms back. So what I found out, for every 2 hours that I put in working out, I can get about 2 hours of almost normal. So it's made working out a whole different thing for me. I actually look forward to working out because right after it, I feel like a real human being. You don't die from Parkinson's, you die with it. So I just take Parkinson's with me wherever I go. I try to explain to people, hey, don't feel sorry for me. I'm blessed to be here standing on the field with you like I was that day. I'm a little slower than I was, but it doesn't stop me from having any fun. So that's the bottom line.
Physically you are, not mentally. You're still as sharp as a cat.
Thank you very much for that.
I'm still laughing at the picking the nose part, by the way. That's what I was laughing at. Like you picking your nose.
That's one of the fun things in life, obviously, especially for boys. When my son was growing up, I said, "Brian, why do you always have your finger in your nose?" He said, "Dad, it's just a great place to hang it." And I walked away. I said, "You know what? Just watch on the next time any of you are on the freeway. Just watch the cars. It'll always be a man, and there isn't 5 cars that go by before you see somebody digging away. I'm guaranteeing it right now."
See, this is why my kids love going to the field. See, Luke likes going to the field because he gets to see the other quarterbacks throw, and he gets to hear you coach. And my son Brady, he loves to just stand next to you and learn things like that, because I realize when he's taking the team pictures now, he's doing some ill-advised things that you taught him to do with his hands that probably he shouldn't be doing.
I told him, don't do anything in public that your mother would be ashamed of. So, but I'll tell you right now, he's got a sense of humor. That one does.
He definitely does on that. There's no doubt. So best practice is now working out 2 hours a day.
That's what I find. That's my anything more than that, and I start getting too fatigued, and I don't recover. Anything less than that, I don't get enough of the good stuff, hormone-wise, to balance off the dopamine.
So training has always been an aspect, even of functional fitness. Nutrition has as well. How about nutritionally for you now? Are there things that you're either supplementing or with food that you're doing to maximize your energy, focus, limiting some of the side effects?
You know, you're bringing this up, and I'm going to jump on it because you're giving me an opportunity.
Please.
The nutrition pyramid and the hydration pyramid is huge. And I listen to you talk, and I see you, Pat. You know, hydration is absolutely huge. If you can, hydrate with alkaline water. It helps recovery process, helps to neutralize lactic acid. 1/2 to 2/3 of your body weight in fluid ounces, preferably alkaline water. And then you go whole foods, 40-30-30, hopefully, hormone-free, 40% complex carbs, 30% protein, 30% smart fat. You have 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, but a balanced meal. People don't realize that calories are a measure of energy, measure of heat. So every meal, whether it's a snack or a real meal, every meal should be 40-30-30. You try to put the most calories in your body before you're going to burn the most calories. So if you just follow those simple rules, and then if you supplement, the supplements that you and I talked about 20 years ago still hold up pretty good. A megavitamin, of some variety, as long as it's not emulsified with yeast. It's got to be water-based. And then vitamin C, vitamin E, CoQ10, and alpha-lipoic in the middle of your largest meal. D3 is turning out to be a very important one also, especially if you're in a place where there's not much sun. And if you can mix and match those around nutrition and around when you're burning your energy, you can't go wrong. We have the best food available in the world, and we're the worst nutritionally of any country in the world. And so nutrition is, you mix in a little sleep with that, nutrition and sleep and recovery.
Talk about that sleep, because you've often talked about REM cycles, and you've talked about this for a while. Because I remember with Drew and some of the athletes, as far as trying to see how many cycles you get into now REM wise, and actually timing that.
I'm glad you brought this up. Thanks for queuing this up for me, by the way, because I really believe in it. I got most of my data from Stanford and StanfordSleep.com, but the first 4 hours of your nighttime sleep are for physical recovery. And if you can get those hours before midnight, it has to do with circadian rhythm and light. But if you can get 4 hours of sleep before midnight, that's the best. That is total physical recovery. All right. After you fall asleep, you want to sleep 4.5, 6, 7.5, or 9 hours. Those are REM cycles.
One more time. 4.5.
Actually, set your alarm for 4.5, 6, 7.5, or 9. If you wake up in the middle of one of those cycles, it screws up your neuroplasticity for the whole day. Everything you learned yesterday intellectually and physically gets muddled in your brain. So we're also in our country sleep deprived. So sleep 4.5, 6, 7.5, or 9. Sleep cool. All right. The optimal temperature that we've researched for athletes is right at 68 degrees. Like in my house, my wife sleeps in flannels and about 17 comforters. So I had to go out and buy. You're making me laugh. To buy a chili pad.
It's like Melanie's the same way.
I just think it's a male-female thing. But I have a chili pad where it looks like one of those mats that you go to the beach with. Set it on 68, and I can sleep on my side of the bed at 68, and she can be as warm as she wants to be. But for an athlete, if you sweat at night, if you're sleeping and sweating, you have more lactic acid when you wake up than you did when you went to bed. So sleep correctly with the times around your REM cycle and sleep cool.
And one of the debates you used to talk about is, okay, and we, as the athletes and even as the coaches, we would converse with this. Your philosophy is it'd be better to sleep 6 hours than 6.5 or 7 hours, because you're waking up in the middle of a cycle.
If you wake up in the middle of a REM cycle, your neuroplasticity is screwed up. Now, have you got time for one little sidebar real quick?
Yeah.
Also sleep dark. Don't let light touch skin, because those skin cells are telling your brain, hey, it's still light out, there's saber-toothed tigers hunting us. So if you have that in your mind. So if perchance you can possibly manage it, it's better to sleep 4.5 than it is 5. The bottom line there is you have to learn how long does it take you to fall asleep, and is your sleep being interrupted. The last thing I'm going to say about that, they found out that if you do wake up at 2:30 in the morning regularly, stay up for 90 minutes. Then when you go back to bed, you get a second shot of growth hormone. Even at 73, my dad is 100 sneaking up on 101. Even at his age, when you sleep, whatever growth hormone you have left in your body gets distributed for either recovery or, if you're young, growth. All right? So if you do happen to wake up, don't lay there and look at the ceiling saying, I can't go back to sleep. Get up and walk around and do something. That's when I take notes and do a little thinking for 90 minutes. Then I go back to sleep. Two things happen. You get a second shot of growth hormone, which really helps with Parkinson's, and you'd be amazed at how smart you are at 2:30 in the morning.
I've been waking up a lot lately at 2:30 in the morning.
Well, how old are you now?
49.
Yeah, you're hitting exactly where it starts to happen. So
I go work out, though.
Well, and that's just as good. But if you can, stay up for a full 90 minutes. Okay?
I like that.
Because it works.
Can I call you and we'll just go work out together at 2:30 in the morning?
I'll tell you what, I don't mind battle buddies. Now, our wives might have something to say about that. So.
Well, hey, all you parents out there listening in, you're loving this conversation, because you're going to have your son or daughter listening about, he just said, the earlier you go to bed before midnight, the better. And I'm not going to go too deep on this tangent, but even if you go back into what Coach House would preach, if you look at Eastern philosophies and even some of the organs that are would be regenerated. Oh, look, he's got the hands up now, right? Am I right?
You're dead on. And the key here is, if you're a late night studier, don't. Go to bed 2 hours before midnight and get up 2 hours earlier tomorrow. And it all works better. But again,
kids, he didn't say don't study. He said go to bed and get up earlier and study. Right? I want to make sure you hear that correctly, kids. And also, parents, the other thing I want to ask, because this is the question, Tom, that I get all the time, and I want you to answer this because you said this in 1999, and you said, and it's rung true the whole time. The question I always get is, can my kid take creatine?
Yes.
Explain, please.
Creatine is a recovery product. It's not illegal. But we've added one more thing to the equation. Creatine glutamine in combination makes it a lot more efficient. Creatine by itself is okay, but you have to hydrate like crazy or you're going to pull muscle. And a lot of the weight gain is stored water. Creatine glutamine gives you all the recovery process. When ATP goes to ADP, goes to AMP, creatine glutamine will pump it right back up to ATP, and you'll recover faster. But what you have to be careful of is that if you don't hydrate properly with the creatine glutamine, you're going to have issues with
the body can assimilate. Is it 2 grams of creatine?
Yes.
2 grams. And at what age would you say is quote okay? Because you talk about it's like eating 5 pounds of meat.
Yeah.
But instead of having 5 pounds of meat, you have 2 grams.
I'd wait till testosterone hits. And everybody said, well, when do you know testosterone? And I used to say it's the shaving rule. It's not. It's when when the boys start needing deodorant. That's when testosterone shows up.
All right, good. So you're hearing it from the master, from the guru, from Yoda himself, Tom House. He's here, and I hope you're enjoying the conversation right now. One of the things I love studying is best practices. When I have the opportunity to be around anyone who's a high performer, and Tom House has been doing this for many, many moons now, since the mid-1970s as an athlete and as a coach, and now as someone who's the world's best athletes and executives and leaders even reach out to for the highest performance. Best practices, Tom, besides the exercise a couple hours a day, the nutrition, are there any other best practices that you do now to even keep your mind sharp, to keep your energy, your spirit sharp? What are a few of the things that you may do that you can pass on some wisdom for our folks listening in today?
Well, again, we talked about this off camera. Every body is different. Everybody processes different. But there are some rules that hold up across the board. You have to have some kind of predictable process in your life to have outcomes that are manageable. What happens in today's world is everybody spends all their time on outcome when it's process that delivers the outcome. So around your motivation, around your time constraints, around your requirements as a husband, father, etc., how do you get the most out of managing your time? So the only thing that everybody in this world has the same amount of is time. Everybody's got 24 hours a day. The people that manage their time the best around their parameters are going to be your high achievers. And there's obviously no one set way to do it, but at the end of the day, if you can look back on your day and determine 1 or 2 things that you didn't get done, or 1 or 2 things that you could get better with, and that is the start of your planning of your process tomorrow. Think about how good you can be. This is what I've seen across the board with all the elite people I've worked with. They're always trying to get a little better every day. Not 20% better today, but 1% better. And they don't go to bed at night without writing down, I'm going to do this and this tomorrow. 1, 2, or 3 things. Just think about if your kids and if my kids just got better at one thing for 365 days for 20 straight years, that's your Drew Breeses and your Tom Brady's and your Nolan Ryans. That's what the good ones do. And I'm sure that's the same thing in the corporate world. I'm sure it's the same thing in the military. The people that manage their time the best are the ones that get most out of their possibilities for performance.
Yeah, attention to detail, focus, and you hear me talk about all the time, 1% better, 1% better. Even on the field or here in the weight room, we talk about, hey, focus on one thing that you can get better at today. Maybe it's in the drop, maybe it's in your vision, maybe it's in your form and how you're going to do a certain lift. Maybe it's in your breath work, in your breath work and learning how to breathe with more full breaths and learning to relax your breath in times of stress and pressure, like right now as you all take a deep breath in and learn to relax that body. Like these little things, these very small things are very big things as well. So when you look at optimal performance, you look at peak performance, these are all some of the things that when you focus on it, all of a sudden it becomes that Zen performance, as Phil Jackson used to talk about, right? That Zen performance on that. Any other best practices, Tom, that you practice personally that help you design a great day so you can go out there and still coach and still lead your organizations and your businesses and show up like you are here today?
Well, the one thing that I would encourage every instructor out there and every athlete is to be authentic. Okay? There's too many coaches out there that try to be all things to all people and end up being nothing to anybody. And the same as an athlete looking for a coach. Find someone that shares a philosophy with you that will challenge you without making it an outcome failure type thing. Sports normally are games of failure coached by negative people in a misinformation environment. And what you have to do is find someone that will let you understand that failing is part of the learning process. When you see someone on TV that's really good at what they're doing, they've probably failed more than anybody else because they know what not to do.
Yep.
Don't let failure define you. Let failure help you learn. We learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. Anybody can go good. It's going bad and learning from it and not going bad the same way. What's Einstein's definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and expecting a different result. You have to be able. I'm going to go a little philosophical on you here.
Please.
The greatest right we have as a human being is the right to change. What's the hardest thing for a human being to do?
Change.
So how do you change? There has to be a compelling reason. Find a compelling reason in your life, and you surround yourself with people that will help you facilitate change. Those are the people that end up looking back at the rest of the world.
Wasn't that change? That's the wants versus the needs, right?
Yeah, and remember, everybody wants to play in the big leagues. Everybody wants to be an NFL quarterback. Everybody wants to be Todd Durkin. What do you need to do to be Todd Durkin? That gets confused in today's world. We're an outcome society that is rewarding a result instead of looking at the process. If I had one thing that I would really emphasize in our conversation today, make sure your kid understands process, because they can control process. They can't control outcome. So the better your process, the better chance you have to be the best you can be.
Okay, this is good because we are in an unprecedented time. Many kids around the country or around the world, seasons just got canceled. School is not in session. How would you advise a parent or a young coach or an old coach right now in a culture that so desperately struggles with delayed gratification, right? Like,
Right.
What would you say? How do you coach someone to fall in love with the process?
It's so hard because in today's world, it's instant gratification. Everybody gets a trophy.
Correct.
Nobody is allowed to say they won or lost. They won or lost anymore. The bottom line is, if it's free, that's what it's worth. If it's given to you, then you never have any self-worth or self-confidence that you actually had something to say with the process. So the bottom line for me is, let a kid fail. It's so hard. You have kids, I had kids. And to watch your son fail at something on the field tears your heart out.
Right.
And for the right reason, we've been trying to make that easier. My mom, an Iowa farm girl, had a philosophy: it doesn't kill you. It's a learning experience. And you can't lie, cheat, or steal, but everything else is a learning experience. So my brother and I probably had 700 stitches between us before we got out of the house.
700?
Oh, easy. Arrows in the forehead, hatchets in the back of the house. I mean, it was fun stuff, falling out of trees. But again, in today's world, it's helicopter parents. What do they call them? Lawnmower parents. The parents are afraid to let their kids, fail or be embarrassed.
Yep.
When that's how you build character. And when you have adversity and you deal with it, you feel a whole lot about yourself getting up in the morning than having someone take the adversity off your back and tell it, because in the back of your mind, kids aren't dumb. They know when they earn something and they know when they don't. And that, if I had a wish list for every parent, every kid, make them understand that failing is not an issue. Failing the same way every time is an issue. But learn from your failures, and the more you fail, the better you're going to succeed toward the end.
I call these Tomisms. I get these little quotes from you all the time when I'm out in the field, and I want to just speak to a few specific people right now. Can you please give these people a talk? Tom, right now, if you are talking to a young boy or girl, let's just say between 12 and 17, with everything going on in the world, what would Coach House say to them, speak to them?
I would say this is not your fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's what is. But with these circumstances that we're dealing with right now, you can't be out on the field with your teammates. They're taking that away from you. What I would say that there's windows of trainability, and I would hold them to this. The windows of trainability, and then there's types to train, things to train with. So you take the age of the kid. So did you say 12?
12 to 17.
Okay, basically they're leaving their neurological window and getting into their muscle window, where muscle and nerves can talk to each other. You, with deep training, and that's working on your own, and this is what you and I did, throwing a tennis ball against your garage door, pretending you're hitting pop-ups to yourself, throwing a football at a net where you're by yourself. Deep training with the correct protocols is actually better for you than going out and hanging out with your buddies in a practice situation. So turn what is an adversarial condition with where we are in our world right now into something that will actually help. Can I bring up Drew Brees' name?
Of course.
Okay. So one of the things that we did this off season, Drew spent more time deep training with a lacrosse stick thrown into a net, with a baby foot, a 12-ounce football thrown into a pitchback.
That's right.
Throwing 2-pound, 1-pound balls instead of a football. He did more deep training, which is training by himself, going back to when he was a little kid. When I used to throw a tennis ball against the garage door, I thought it was Sandy Koufax facing whoever.
Yep.
What does that do? It allows the kid to visualize. And if he hangs the tennis ball, it doesn't bother him. He goes right back to what the next pitch is. In other words, when you're controlling your own personal training by yourself, you don't boo yourself. You don't throw a hung curveball and say, "House, you suck. You're so bad at that." The ball comes back and you throw the right one.
That's right.
So what kids learn to do is turn the page on something that didn't work and stay involved with the only thing that can work, which is your next pitch or your next path. So the bottom line there is deep training by yourself, depending on your window of trainability. Find a coach that can give you drills that you can repeat, get your repetitions done there, and if you do, when you come back out and everything opens up again, you'll be ahead of every one of your competitors, every one of them.
So if you hear Coach talking right now, he's talking about trainability versus learnability.
Exactly.
Right? And to get out there and practice. So now is not a time to sit at home and be on the Xbox or playing games. Now is the time to get out and play. And it might not be with your team right now. But the bottom line is that, kids, you will be back. You will be back on the field. We don't know if that's in a month, 3 months, or 6 months. But those whom are best prepared and are falling in love with the process, now all of a sudden when you get back, the dreams and aspirations that you have when you're throwing into that net, when you're out for a run around the neighborhood by yourself, now all of a sudden the light bulb moment's going to go off and you're going to be so much further ahead when you get back. But it's hard because you may want the results now, and it's frustrating, and I get it, and I understand, we empathize, but know this, that we will get through this. And if you listen to what Coach just said, even the pros, right? Even the pros, they're doing the exact same thing. So, and by the way, Tom, to your point, just the other day on the field, someone commented they've never seen Drew throw so good.
Well,
right?
Drew, I think he's taken 10 years off his arm. I literally, and we did the math. I figure he's got about 15,000 throwing repetitions and he didn't throw a football until 3 weeks ago. He did not throw a real football until about 3 weeks ago. But yet he got 15,000 throwing repetitions with footwork, whatever, visualizing a Super Bowl play, throwing into a net with a 1-pound ball. I mean, you can create whatever you want in your mind. Watch kids play, and that's the power of play.
And that's the marrying up of the physical, the mental, emotional, the visual, the neurological, right? So that's been the neat thing with Tom and I since Cam Cameron introduced us back in the day, right? When Drew first went to you because of Cam, and then came over here and started training. Know this, coaches, it's always about that collaboration, because ultimately it's about that athlete on that. And next, Tom, you're speaking to the kid. I know right now there's a trainer that's listening in, and if you could give any wisdom where you sit now and all that you've done, if you could give any wisdom to a trainer, whether they're green and just new to this field, or whether they've been around for a decade or so, what would you pour into them right now? What would you say to them?
Don't be afraid to screw up. I mean, you don't want to hurt somebody physically. But if you're a young trainer, the only way you're going to get better is to basically go out and experience what you need to do. I kind of, when I set clinics and camps up, I try to get somebody that knows what they're doing with somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. And that combination will help both of them learn. Because if you can teach, it means you understand it yourself. And if you can't teach, number one, you don't know how to do it. And number two, the kid you're working with isn't going to survive either. But if you're young at what you do, if you're just getting started as a trainer or a conditioning coach or a pitching coach or a quarterback coach, don't be afraid to dive in. And I'm going to use the word authenticity again.
Yep.
If you're authentic, if you're delivering what you know from your heart with no strings attached, making it about the kid, not about you, that is recognized by the athlete in a hurry. Athletes, especially young kids, they'll see through the BS really, really quick. Be yourself. If you don't know, tell the kid you don't know. Let's find out together. But that avid learning together is what relationships are made out of. And I think we said about it off camera. The person you are, the person you want to be, and the person that people see, athlete and coach, when they have that together, then there's a bond there. There's a learning bond that can't be beat. Even if it's not perfect information, if it's delivered so that the kid gets better, and it's not about the coach, it's about the kid, and the kid accepts the information he's getting from the coach and is not afraid to ask questions, both parties make out 100%. So be aggressive. Believe in yourself. Don't try to be all things to all people. Just be the best you can be, and try to help the kid you're working with at that point in time be the best he can be.
Yeah.
That's what 70 years will tell you right there.
Tom, I've always looked at you as a mentor. And as a mentee and a mentor, I believe, regardless of your age, we all need mentors. We need colleagues who we can lean on. About a month ago, when we first went to the field, the first day back, we were standing there and the guys were training. And you leaned in and said something that you probably don't even know, but it was perhaps one of the greatest compliments that anyone could ever say. And you said, "Man, you haven't changed in 20 years."
No, seriously, we change. But we don't change. When I listen to your enthusiasm and the way you go about talking to your athletes, I mean, it takes me back to when we were on the floor doing the wall stuff.
That's right.
20 years ago.
That was torturous, by the way.
Well, but you know what? We got tortured together.
That's
and
right.
Another thing, fun.
Yep.
Have we ever not laughed our butts off
That's right.
out on the field?
Always.
If you're not laughing, you're not having fun. If you're not having fun, you're not learning as fast as you could. So the power of play is backed up with fun. If it's fun, then you're passionate about what you do. Like I said, at 73 with Parkinson's, I've never worked a day in my life. I still look forward to the field as part of the fun part of my 24-hour time frame.
Final few questions. In having the opportunity to work with some amazing men and women in your lifetime, what makes these people so special? Drew Brees, what's different about Drew? And we obviously work with him in a little different capacities, but we know the mindset. But what makes Drew unique to you?
There's a lot of things unique about Drew, but if I had to describe one thing, he's got this compelling need to get better every day. And he does and he doesn't do anything unless it's perfect. If it's not perfect, he'll keep doing it until he can.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't mind the learning curve. He can't be good right away, but he strives for perfection. And working with him, and the same with a Nolan Ryan or a Tom Brady, where the coach comes in, he'll say, okay, what did you see there? And if you're not paying attention, I mean, the subtle things, like, you and I are standing watching a workout with quarterback and receivers. When Drew will do something and he didn't feel quite right, he'll look and say, what did you see? And if you can't say, I saw a little bit of head movement or your front side got soft, then you're not invested in trying to help him get better.
Mm-hmm.
So as a coach, when you leave the field, you should be just about as tired as the athlete you're working with, if you really care. So, again, the compelling need to get better every day is what I think one thing about Drew. And then every rep has to be perfect for him.
Yeah. And I would say on a completely different note, in work with him for 18 years, compartmentalizing life, when he's training, when it's on, it's 100% focused on. And secondly, from a leadership perspective, he brings out the best in everyone around him.
He's a we guy. I'd never hear him say I.
Yep.
What can we do different to make that play work?
Yep.
What did we do wrong there?
Yeah.
So
he's a once in a lifetime. He's a once in a lifetime kind of guy.
And that's why he's where he is.
That's right.
In the eyes of football long term.
How about Tom Brady? What makes him so special?
Number one, when I first met him, he's not the best athlete that I've ever worked with. But I think his mind and his capacity to understand his limitations, like he knows he's not a sprinter. He knows he can't run, but he's figured out how to be quick. He's not fast, but he's figured out how to be quick and how to move in the pocket to where it doesn't make any difference if he's slow running. He's quick on his feet. And in his ability to literally take that 6'5", 6'6" body and make it small. If you watch him throw, his timing is just as good as Drew's. Looks different doing it, but what I think in working with him, after every throw he goes pop pop, pop pop, and that time frame from foot strike to ball release takes this long. That's 0.25 seconds. So he spends his whole workout is around foot strike, pop pop, pop pop. And so in teaching him, it's a different teach than it is with Drew. The first thing he looks at is timing, because you can't throw the football till your front foot gets down, and then he works from there. And then when his foot is taken away from him, the timing comes from his torso. So Brady goes about it differently, but it's the same commitment to excellence that I see in Drew.
So if you were to take the best of the best and give a young boy or girl who wants to throw better, and they need a minute of Tom House wisdom on how to become a better thrower, how do you take the short version of 3 years of wisdom and say, okay, you talked about the foot strike. What would you say to these young boys and girls that dream of someday fulfilling their full potential? What would be a few, let's say 3, 4, or 5 of the mechanical things that they must do? Not training wise, but actually talk turkey on the field like I hear you talk all the time.
Okay, I'll clean it up. GFF.
Oh, yep.
Go friggin' fast.
That's right.
Because the faster you go, the less things you can screw up. Keep your eyes level.
Good.
Firm up your front side, and keep your back foot on the ground until the ball leaves your hand, or the ball leaves the bat, or the tennis racket. So go fast.
Eyes level.
Yeah, go fast. GFF, eyes level, firm front side, drag your back foot. Sports are angles, distance, and time. And what we just said right there cuts the angle, cuts the distance, and cuts the time.
You're getting some Tom House wisdom. And he said, drag the back foot.
Until the ball leaves the bat, the hand, or the tennis racket.
Yep. So when you see all these guys warming up before the game on TV, and they're all, I'll call them the Tom House warm-ups, because now everyone's doing
the 3D QB warm-up.
Okay, the 3D QB, that's good. We don't want to leave that out. But where it all started, and now with the 3D QB on that is, why is that? Explain that, because I think the number one thing most young athletes is they take that leg and swing it around.
Yeah, it's what they were taught. It's what I taught when I first got into the business as a coach. We thought that the back foot had to be off the ground when you threw. It's just the opposite. The back foot is like a rudder on a boat. And the longer you can keep the back foot on the ground, the more accurate you're going to be with your throwing or striking. So it's counterintuitive, but what our eyes can't see, the computer can. And when you see enough in a computer at 1,000 frames a second, you realize what we've been teaching isn't quite what is happening. Is it feel or is it real?
Yeah. You used to talk about traditional wisdom all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with traditional wisdom, but take what the old school had and bring it up to speed with the new technology. Now you have the best, and that's where you are where you are as a coach right now. You understand the old school, and you can pull the best from that. You also get the new school with what Zach and all these propeller heads do. Okay, and you can mix
smart people, by the way.
Mix the two together and come up with a better teach for the kid. That makes you feel better about what you're teaching and makes the kid get better and stay healthier.
Yeah, from the training perspective, we always say from the ground up, get it from the ground up, and how you take that base of support and literally transfer the power all the way from the ball of your big foot, your foot, all the way up through your lower body, through your glutes, through your torso, rotary torso, all the way to fingertips. And that's why back in '99 when he said, you got to train from feet to fingertips, left, right, front, and back, 3D, all the way around. I'm like, ha, I get it. And it took all that traditional wisdom of a undergraduate degree in kinesiology and a master's degree in biomechanics, and it made sense.
Yeah.
Right?
And there's nothing wrong if you haven't taught it in the past correctly. There is something wrong if you know this and you still teach the old way, then you've got an authenticity issue. You got to be able to change.
Tom, rumor has it that before Drew goes to training camp, that Drew's going to pick up a baseball bat and he's going to face this pitcher who pitched in the bigs for about 10 years, and his name is Tom House. I understand, and you didn't tell me this, that you are going to be pitching. Your goal for many months now has been to throw a BP against Drew.
Yeah, I've been training right along with Drew for a different reason. I want to get him in a cage and embarrass him. It's probably not going to happen, but I'm...
No, it is going to happen. Because he's told me to ask you the question.
Yeah.
He said, "What do you think is going to happen?" So I want your prediction because I'll tell you what Drew said is going to happen. What do you think when you get in? You're going to throw a batting practice. Can I do this live? By the way.
Sure.
Ooh.
If you want to. Now this is the parameters that I'm dealing with. If I don't have command of my stuff, I can't afford to hit him up the side of the head or hit him in the knee or something. So if I can't control fastball, breakable, changeup, I'm not going to throw him BP.
You better get your 2-hour workout in so you're calm before.
But
that.
if I can, he will not get the ball out of the infield. I've seen his swing. I can miss that bat with no problem at all.
How many pitches is this going to be?
As many as I can stand, and as many. He won't let me out of the cage. We'll hit till it's dark. If he's having trouble hitting off me,
you know the competitor is. He's not going to let you out until he hits a dinger.
I'll tell you right now, I've seen his left-handed swing. I can throw it under his hands hard, swing right through it because he's got a little loop in his swing, and soft breaking ball away. He won't hit a ground ball out of the infield.
Well, he said he's going to light you up and take you deep every time.
Well,
he asked me because I told him I'm speaking on the podcast, and he said, "Listen, ask Tom one question: what's going to happen when we do BP? Because I'm taking him deep."
I've embarrassed a whole lot of superstars before, doing what I do best. So I can put the ball where his bat can't hit it, but I'm not. The caveat is if I don't have command of my body, I do not want to hit him. But I'm strong enough now. I can actually throw. I've trained all summer long. I'm ready to throw. It's just, can I command what I'm throwing?
Brush him off the plate, Tom.
Well,
brush him off the plate.
That if we were in the big leagues, it's called chin music.
Yes.
I basically move him away.
He's quick. We've been working on his movement.
We'll see. So yes, if we get in the cage, I'm going to embarrass him. But the only way I'm going to go. Tell me what. The only way I'm going to go in the cage is what? If I can throw the ball where I need to throw it. Okay. If I can't locate, I can't.
Folks, you heard it here first. Tom House versus Drew Brees. I'm going live. Tom didn't even know I knew that, but he just accepted the fact that we will go live whenever this happens before Drew goes to training camp, as long as he has control. So, Tom, you better be making sure you get your workouts in. Your best practice are dialed in.
I'm working. I'm hoping next week we'll do it. Have anybody look at the book Tom House against any left-hander in the history of baseball. Any left-handed hitters hit about $130 off of me. Now right-handers, I kept a lot of right-handers in the big leagues, but left-handers I got out pretty good. So, and Drew's confident, like all superstars should be, but he's got no chance.
Wow. You have heard it here. The gauntlet has been dropped here on the TD Impact Show. Tom House calling out superstar quarterback Drew Brees. Drew, I hope you're not listening to this today, because I know right now if you are, you just picked up the pace on your workout tenfold on it. So, Tom, I got to tell you, it has been an absolute blast having you here today. I could go on for hours and hours. You guys probably feel the same way, like, don't let it end, don't let it end. But I so appreciate you actually driving over here today to Fitness Quest 10 to be on the show.
It's my pleasure. And I don't know if you noticed, but I got warm fuzzies and teared up about 4 times. It's fun to go back and look where we've come from. Think about how far you have come as a mentor of young people on the fitness side of the equation. Think about how many people that you've had, change their lives. Think about what we've done together. And without even trying one kid at a time, I bet you there's 100,000 kids out there that are better for the experience of being around Todd Durkin. I'll guarantee it.
Well, if it's 100,000 for me, that's because of you.
Well, and remember that network, and surround yourself with people that are like you. It's the power of play.
Can you hear the similarities, folks? I knew I wanted 100 to be special. I didn't think I'd end it in tears.
Well, I know it's hard, but you know what? It's real, and I think that's what you and I connected with. This was before kids.
That's right. I wasn't even married yet. I had no kids.
And here we are. What, 20 years later?
Yep.
And looking back, today it seemed like it was yesterday, but it's been 20 friggin' years, dude.
I know. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for just being the man you are, the coach you are, the mentor you are, because every time I see you, if it's months that go by, if it's a year that goes by that I don't talk to you, it's always just like so good to see your man. And
right
I knew that
you.
day that you're my guy. Like, you know how you meet your guy, your gal, and you know that's your mentor? I knew that day that you're my guy, and that didn't waver. And 20-something years later, you'll always be that for me, because you have so much wisdom, and that comes through me. I want you to know, everyone I work with, again, I said at the beginning of the show, I'll say at the end here, my methodology, my coach, who I am, there is no one on this planet that's impacted my philosophy more than Tom House. And to have you sitting here in my office, and heck, you hadn't been to the lower facility since we were upstairs only, it's truly humbling and just so special. So thanks for being here, Tom.
My pleasure. There's your authenticity. The people that are listening to you right now, that's what you just heard right there is called authenticity. Proud of you, buddy.
Coach, to end it, what's next? Is there something that besides lighting Drew up in the batting cages, or any other things that you're working on that we need to know about? Because every time I talk to you, you always got something special happening.
Yeah, I've got one more set of research we're going to get out there sometime in the next couple years around the new app Mustard. It's called Vector Management. So we're taking mechanics and functional strength and marrying them to vector management, where we can actually see that this amount of head movement is taking away X amount of foot-pounds. This arm going this way is taking X amount. So we'll be able to not only see what it costs with a mechanical inefficiency, but how much strength is required to do it that way, and how to fix, so that all the vectors involved with throwing and striking are now manageable based on the research around mechanics and functional strength. So everything we've been doing now has a new quantifier called vector management. That's what's coming.
And that's an app?
Well, it's going to be in the app. We have a new, if you went to Mustard, thank you very much for bringing this up, I forgot. We have a new app. It's called Mustard. Just go
Mustard?
Mustard. And there's a lot involved with it. But our first go-around, August 1st, is we're going to put it out there with limited access. But it's happening. And it's everything that I am. I call it a mobile mentoring device. If you have a cell phone, you've got everything that Tom House knows on your cell phone. And we're going to reach 100 million families that have, young kids. And that's the market. It's great to work with Drew and the superstars. But I'm after making a difference in a whole bunch of kids, most of which quit playing a sport before they're 14 years old. I want them to play longer and play with more fun and passion.
So the app is called Mustard.
Mustard. Just go to mustard.com
Yep.
and see what happens.
And it's MUSTARD.
Just like mustard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's coming out in August, and certainly I'll be sharing that as well, because anything that Tom does, I'm behind, and I know it's always done right. And I also know they're doing a documentary on you as well, correct?
You've done your homework. Shame on you. Yeah, but it's me. It's basically Drew with me tagging along, and it should be fun. I don't think they're calling it a documentary. I think they're calling it some kind of a movie doc, whatever the new phrase is.
Yeah, Drew ratted you out, by the way, and all this. He ratted you all out.
He did. So that's where it's coming from. I didn't realize you'd done your homework. But yeah, it's going to be a fun thing. And if you like the $1 Million Arm, what Drew is putting together with me tagging along will be as entertaining as that, but it'll also be very informational and I think inspirational. Watching a kid from Texas that shouldn't be where he's at, and a kid from La Puente, California that shouldn't be where he's at either. But because of everything we've been talking about, everybody's gotten better for the experience.
Well, Tom, thank you. Thank you for this conversation today. Thank you for being here today. And most importantly, thank you for just impacting me in so many different ways. I so appreciate you, and thank you, and I love you.
Right back at you, Todd. Thanks.
Wow. Oh, wow. Folks, Coach House just left the building a few minutes ago, and I'm sitting here mesmerized. And number one, Tom House is a legend. He's a legend. And it was so special to have him here for episode number 100. I can't believe it's almost been 1 year since the Impact Show started. It's been 1 year. And I want to thank each and every one of you for listening in. Listening to this episode, many of you have listened to most episodes. And if not, go back and listen to some of the episodes. One thing with Tom House I was thinking while I was actually speaking with him is this. How cool is it that here's a coach who I've known for over 20 years and he's known me for 20 years. And the power of the coaching fraternity and that mentor-mentee relationship is so darn special. And when you have folks like that you can continually learn from in all areas of life, not just training, not just coaching, but every time I'm around him, he makes me better. He makes me think bigger. He allows me to really think critically about my own training and coaching and what I can do. And to have him in here today to talk about all that he has contributed to the sports training industry and to life, and then also to what he's continuing to work on. Here's a guy who's already had a movie after him. Again, I want to encourage you to go and on Netflix is to watch. I believe it's on Netflix. The $1 Million Arm. It is an awesome movie, and Tom House epitomizes coach, and he epitomizes mentor. And if you enjoyed today's episode, can you do us a favor? Please go out and share this episode. If you're a trainer, coach, fitness enthusiast, weekend warrior, hey, if you're a sports nut and you love football or baseball, you probably really, really enjoyed this episode. And I hope that you can share this episode with your community. Go to Facebook, go to Instagram, on your emails and your newsletters, do that. And then how you could really help us is go to iTunes and write us a review. The reviews really help us. A 5-star rating and a review always help the show. And I'm looking forward to the second century here from episode 100 to 200, because let me tell you what, they go by fast. And I'd love to hear your feedback in the first 100. You have a lot of great content to go back in the last year, but I'm looking forward to a great next 100 on the podcast. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for joining us today on episode number 100. I still can't believe it. And don't forget, I am going live when Tom House, if he gets in the batting cage with Drew Brees, and I hope Tom whiffs him. Drew, if you're listening, man, I hope he whiffs you. I hope he sits your tail down, and I'm going to be going crazy for the 73-year-old man on that stuff. So, folks, continue to work hard. Continue to train, continue to eat right, you live inspired, and always, always create impact. I love you guys. Peace, God bless, and go out there, dominate the day.